Hello. Hello. Oh my goodness, I need to mute that over there. Hold on a second. Oh my goodness, I need to mute that over there. Hold on a second. There we go. I have another monitor live over here where I'm monitoring basically all this different stuff. And all of a sudden I hear my voice, as I think you probably heard the echo of it coming through the monitors over there. Anyway, I am streaming actually live here on YouTube. And this is a question and answer kind of a thing. So we're just going to hang out for a little while. I've got a cup of coffee. I'm going to chill, more or less. I mean, the coffee is warm-ish, so it's not like chilled. I'm not drinking iced coffee, though that's very delightful, I'm led to believe. I've had that a few times, but it's not my favorite thing. Anyway, I really appreciate any of you who've made their way into... There are two of you, Jeff. Yes, indeed. Thankfully not. That would be difficult to manage, to say the least. Let me get my belt pack here, like Batman over here. I've got belt packs and everything. And I've got magnetic lavalier thingies so that I can wear a jumper and be a bit warmer and still use my lavalier mic. Though I have to admit, like the sound quality on the SM7B or the KMS-105, there's no comparison. But I like this open space, and I can lean in and have that really strange, somewhat uncomfortable close-up, and I can kind of relax a little bit and just chill out, sit back, relax, enjoy the chat, avail yourself, say hello or ask a question. It's all good. It's all good. And you know, I've got a question right there from Jersey Love Steph. So let's begin, shall we? Before we do that, though. Oh, that's one thing. I've changed my setup back here, and I cannot so easily mute my microphone when I'm drinking. Actually, it's not that hard. I'll just do it like this. Okay, so do that, and then if I do this, and that way you don't have to listen to me glugging away. It's not as easy as when I had the analog mixer over here, but the system now it's just kind of better in every conceivable way. Though I can see myself sort of going back and forth between the two. I like faders and knobs and buttons, things like that. It's not quite as satisfying when it's all in a piece of software. Anyway, oh, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Namaste from India and namaste from California. Hello. So let's answer some questions. I should say let's answer the question, because right now there's only one. Listening to you while I work, I have a question about how do you play backing tracks while live streaming from computer? If I play it on computer, I will go off the live stream. So this is complicated because everyone's systems are going to be ever so slightly different. Even two people with all of the same hardware will quite likely be using different software. Even if I suppose if you had all of the same hardware and all of the same software and everything was configured exactly the same way, then you would expect, I could give advice in this regard and be very specific about it. But that's unusual, to say the least. The main thing is that you're going to need some way for... Now I'm not sure why it would kick you off the live stream. I don't know what that's going on there. Now, why the audio would not play through the live stream, that's pretty easy to understand. It's just that what it is that you need some form of loop back in order to make the same system that you are using send its own audio out the live stream. So for example, this system that I'm running, I'm using an RME interface, and that RME interface has what's called loopback on it. And what that does is it says, okay, this is going out the output down here, and we're going to loop it back virtually to the inputs. And then those inputs I can choose to send out the live stream. For complicated reasons, RME interfaces don't play as nicely with OBS, which is my the streaming software that I use for these live events. And consequently, I have to use loopback in order to do that. There's lots of other, like even just to get my audio out of OBS. There are other ways to do it. I choose to do it using loopback because I don't use hardware outputs 1 and 2 on the RME, but that's not relevant to the person asking the question. What you'll need to find is some way to use loopback. And honestly, I don't know if there are standalone programs. I assume that there are standalone programs for loopback that will let you then tell your computer the audio output from iTunes or YouTube or whatever it is you're playing the audio from. I want you to resend that back as if it's coming in via the, hardware inputs 1 and 2, like if you're using a hardware interface, like a Focusrite, Claret, or Scarlett, or something like that. And that's where it starts to get really complicated, because without knowing all of the details of your system, I can't necessarily advise you in a specific way. But some way of looping it back, that's what you're looking for, to have the output of YouTube or iTunes fold back over, loop back, and then go out the same way that your live audio in the room is going out. I do hope that helps. Let's do this here for a second. Just kind of make it a bit easier to see. Hi Jeff, would you mind go over how to be in tune when singing with guitar? In other words, what specifically to pay attention to when playing guitar chords to make sure the vocals sound good? Then, I bet you have a follow-up here. No? Okay. Well, whether you are singing and playing with guitar or anything else, I would say the main way to be in tune is you have to both listen and anticipate the sounds. So in other words, if I'm trying to sing a scale, if I'm expected to sing those notes at the same time that they're played on the piano, I can't not know where the next note is. I have to anticipate where that pitch is. Does that make sense? If I'm always responding, then I'm always going to be late, and then I will always be out of tune. So in other words, if you want to sing in tune, work on your solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do, where you can sing the notes, and this is a simple example, right? Songs are way more complex than this. Sing the notes of your scale, and I like to use the solfege syllables for movable do. You can do that, or you can choose whatever system works best for you, but this is what they teach in universities, and I think it works really well. Helps with relative pitch, too. And that will help with your intonation. It's not enough to respond. We have to anticipate. And obviously, your daily vocal practice all figures into this as well. So How are you doing on your vocalizations? Is the key appropriate to you? What's your daily vocal practice like? Do you have a daily vocal practice? All of those elements come into play for your intonation. Famous vocal coaches rarely share vocal knowledge online, and some people claim to be vocal coaches, but just do vocal coach reaction videos. Thanks for being a true... Thank you. Wow. Thanks, Jake. I wasn't sure where that was going. And as I was halfway through reading it, I'm like, oh, this could end poorly. But thank you. I really appreciate that. Just trying to help. Trying to help. When I started, I started singing basically about the same time I became conscious. I've just been singing and making music in one way or another for my entire life. But when I tried to start taking it seriously, I found it was incredible the amount of conflicting opinion, conflicting information, and what I would call non-information information, like support. Well, what does that even, really think about that. What does that mean? When someone just tells you to support, they're not telling you anything. They're certainly not telling you anything that you don't know already. If you have been looking into singing at all, you know that you need to quote-unquote support in some way. But what does that mean physically? What does that mean from a body, I call it body geography. You won't find that in any textbook. But I'm always stumbling over my words when I want to use that phrase because I know that you're not going to find it in a textbook. But I really like it. I really like the thought of our bodies and the geography, the relationship of everything to itself, and how that impacts our ability to phonate, to sing effectively. So thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it, and I hope to continue to serve for many years into the future. Hey, Jeff, I'm baritone and can hit a comfortable sustained G4, but for shorter G4 notes, I struggle a bit, and my voice feels strained. Do you have any advice on how to address this? Yeah. Think about that for a second. Think about that for a moment, and think about what that might mean for how you use your voice. If you can comfortably sing the pitch when it's sustained, what might the troubles that you're having on a shorter pitch tell you about how you're using your voice? Any guesses? Okay. I know that the chat can be unwieldy, so... Oh, is that... Let's see. No, okay. So it's EJ. Or is it EJ? Yeah, I think it's EJ. EJ is asking this question. Now, I know this is going to be full disclosure, probably going to be a little contentious. Probably going to be a little contentious here. So bear with me, hear me out. You might think that you've already solved this. That's why I'm saying it's contentious. But basically, you're using your airflow differently. And specifically, you are almost certainly not engaging very effectively before the tonal onset of the shorter note, and you are quite likely, not consciously, but without meaning to, disengaging that physical engagement in the anticipation of the end of that short pitch. So the solution is to practice shorter pitches, and I would recommend you start in a more comfortable area of your voice. For example, like you said you're a baritone, so maybe you start here and just do some very easy scales, but And while you're singing that, it's going to be easy to sing. So singing that, that's not really what's going on. It's an opportunity for you to focus on your engagement, how you're using your body. Pay attention to the way that you are physically engaged and work to maintain as much consistency as possible. When you can do that reliably without taking any short breaths in between the notes, then add those breaths. Is my head like totally cut off on this? Hold on a second here. It's not too bad, but we can do a bit better than that. This looks a bit, oh, that's about as, okay, so I need to adjust the camera. Okay, never mind. That's just going to be what it's going to be today. So, getting back on topic here. Once you can do that very comfortably, then insert a breath. Not sure if you can hear my breaths or not. You should do them as quietly as you can, but I'll make them audible so it's a bit easier to hear. Again, you're trying to maintain as much consistency of engagement throughout the entirety of that phrase, so that that's what's going to help you with the short notes. It's that consistency that we typically tend to release too much of our engagement during the breath cycle, and that then sets us up poorly for the next tonal onset, which is kind of what you're talking about here with these short pitches. If you're not practicing apogeo breath management, this will be difficult or impossible to do. Apogeo breath management, one of the tenets of it is this lateral expand, and I'm sorry, I've hurt my right shoulder, so this is a really tough position to be in right now, but when you're expanding, you get this lateral expansion of the rib cage. That's what I would look into to help with that. It's kind of a lot, but maybe check out a few of those items and see where you find. Eventually, once you've practiced all these things in this comfortable range, you'll move it back up into the higher tessitura. Let's see here. Is it possible to change the voice texture? If the answer is yes, please guide how. Not sure what you mean. I'm sorry, Vestic. Maybe if you could please elaborate by texture. JC the Music Man, good morning to you. How do I find my natural vocal range? I can sing a large range, but I likely have an ideal range. Thanks. Yeah, great question. Great question. So, finding your natural range is about finding the transition points in your voice. Those transition points, you can choose to ignore them if you want, and there are, in fact, techniques that suggest you do exactly that. I do not share that opinion. I am not of the opinion that that is a good way to go about things, but I'm just one opinion, and there are lots of people that would suggest otherwise. When you find those naturally occurring transition points, that tells you a lot about where you are in your vocal range as it relates to the actual physical construction of your instrument. So, switching back over to the piano here for a second. Let's talk about my voice for just a second. And I don't mean like I want to talk about my voice, I just mean it as by way of an example. My primo passaggio is kind of roughly between the C and the C sharp. It's not really C and it's not really C sharp. And quite frankly, primo passaggios for male vocalists, I identify as a male vocalist, most of the time we barely even notice them. We just notice that as we get further along into this area here above middle C, that it gets more and more challenging, and then we come upon this point where we either get past it or we don't. Or if we do, we get past it with only a very different quality to our voices, the so-called break. Knowing where those 2 points, those 2 registration events are, then tells me that I have another registration event about here, and I have another registration event about here. It tells me more about how my overall range is going to develop. And it also tells me a lot about how to use my voice in these various areas to get the most consistent results. So if I want to make a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio, over the break, then I need to prepare that way through this area here. I need to make sure that I'm making those minute adjustments to make the smooth transition. If I don't care about that, then I can do a variety of different things. But understanding these registration events tells us a lot about how to use our voices and how we can get the most out of our voices. We have the most colors, and changes, and differences, stuff like that if you want. I am of the opinion that technique should inform and enable our artistry. And so having that kind of information is really helpful. So how are you going to find your natural singing voice? Work on vowel alignment, work on your arpeggio breath management, work on your registration events. Why would you do those things? Why does it make any difference? Arpeggio breath management means that you will be getting the most efficient adduction or closure of the vocal mechanism. You'll only be using just as much muscle around the vocalis muscle and the cricothyroid muscles as is necessary. In other words, you won't be squeezing your voice together to try to squeeze out pitches or anything like that. This means you have the most flexibility, the most ability to make those adjustments as you move through the various registers of your voice. So arpeggio breath management, vowel alignment. Vowel alignment in the beginning starts off as everything sounding very much the same. Where we get an even response from those 5 cardinal vowels. But as you make your way into the zona di passaggio, that area, I'll show you again on the piano, that area between the primo and secondo passaggi, having learned the control to get vowel alignment here, you will then use that control to make modifications to vowels so that you keep the airflow nice and consistent as you make your way over the registration event. And that's what I would do. That might sound like a lot, it kind of is, but if you want to find out more and more about your natural singing voice, that's the way to do it. Let's see. Davian? Hi, Jeff. I'm a baritone learning how to extend my range by practicing and using proper placement. When I go for higher notes, sometimes the sound comes off as hoarse or not as clean. Does that mean my voice is not used to it, or simply just due to sinuses, lack of sleep, etc.? I hope that makes sense. That's interesting. I can keep on talking to you, but I'm going to get up and close the door because I can hear some sounds coming, but just bear with me for a second. We'll go for a little walk. We'll take a little stroll here for a second around the old studio. You've left out one of the key things about extending range that is quite likely having the most impact on what you're doing, and especially if you're sounding hoarse. My suspicions are that you're not actually practicing registration events, or if you are, you're not doing them in the right places of your vocal range. Now, I've never heard you, I don't know, but when vocalists talk about extending range and they say that they're getting hoarse or not as clean, and you're talking about, you're mentioning all these other things, proper placement, I mean, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean in terms of like singing a higher pitch? Because I can tell you placement will certainly impact tone quality, but thinking about placement has more to do about how the vocal folds are configured. That's why we talk about placement most of the time. When you talk about placement, when a singing instructor is telling you to think about it forward or think about it back, that isn't really like, it's not shifting the sound somehow in your physical being. It's changing the configuration of the vocal fold. Now, you haven't said that that's what you're thinking of, but nothing else in your comments is mentioning registration event practice. So that would be my question for you is, what are you doing for registration event practice? Are you working on making a smooth transition between cricothyroid dominant singing voice and thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice? That's what's going to really extend your range and open up possibilities for you. And yes, I use technical terms there, and I did that specifically because when I say head voice and chest voice, there are these preconceived notions about what they are. I'm sorry about the glugging. I tried to swallow quietly. But the problem is that we've come to think that head voice is synonymous with falsetto. Or maybe it's not entirely falsetto-like. Maybe it's more like a Chris Martin. But there's no space for a smooth transition. Where the sound is consistent. Because in all of those examples, I made a transition from my chest voice to something else. In the one where it was airy, I wouldn't even call that falsetto, I would call it falsetto tone production, because falsetto is also a register of the tenor and baritone singing voice. So anything below a certain area, I'll refer to as falsetto tone production. Calling the Chris Martin version of that head voice, most people would identify with that. It has a lighter, kind of hollower tone quality to it. There's a slight drop off in volume because I'm allowing the vocal fold to change its configuration ever so slightly, but I'm still keeping it adducted so that I don't get too much air in the sound. But then the third one sounds pretty consistent across the secondo passaggio, across the break. Yet I can assure you that I'm making a registration event. I am changing from my chest voice to my head voice, and then changing from my head voice back to my chest voice. That's the way, even if you choose not to do that for some reason, that's the way to really expand your range, because in so doing it, you'll come to an understanding of how your voice operates, how to avoid the strain that's causing the hoarseness, or if you're not feeling any kind of strain or perceiving it at this juncture, then at least you'll not have the hoarseness any longer. You won't get that hoarseness in your voice. I hope that helps. Happy to be able to join a live chat. I'll be a little bit late. It's been a while. Just saying hi. Hello, Juliet. Thank you for all the videos that tend to go to Apple Podcasts. Yeah, I wish I could put more on the Apple Podcasts, but for various reasons, I can't. I don't want to get into it right now. That's like a years-long frustration. I've been struggling with that for years at this point, and it's kind of disappointing to me, but it is what it is. Jalen, hello. Thank you for saying hi. Is that Qt? Good morning, and good morning to you. I hope you're still there. First time catching you live. Welcome to the chat. I have a question. It's coming from my brother. He learned to sing in his 20s and finds it difficult to sing with feeling. How do I explain what singing with feeling entails? And EJ says, thank you so much, Jeff. That was extremely helpful and eye-opening for me. My pleasure. My pleasure. That's what we're here for. Well, Qt, what does it mean to you? That's kind of the answer. And your brother might have to ask what it means to them too. Singing with feeling, there's no objective. There's no, like, I can't pull out a yardstick and say, okay, if you hit this mark, then you are singing with feeling. If you hit this mark, whoa, that's a little uncomfortable. Like, claw it back a little bit. Or if you're only here, I'm sorry. That's not very feeling oriented. Now, in thinking about your question, though, I know that there's something about listening to performers that aren't connecting in any way with the music, and you sort of have a sense of, like, like we have phrases for it, right? Like, oh, they're phoning it in. Sorry, I got Velcro stuck to my jumper here, and like my arm was stuck. They're phoning it in. They're thinking about something else. It goes on and on, right? So my thoughts on the matter are that your brother has to, first of all, maybe your brother doesn't want to sing with feeling. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Now, if your brother does wish to sing with feeling, and by the way, who's the judge? Who says your brother isn't singing with feeling? Are you saying that he doesn't sing with feeling? Because maybe he's just not singing with a feeling in the way that you experience it. Not every artist speaks to every person. Someone can listen to Tom Waits and hard for me to imagine, but I can bet that they're brought to tears. And actually, on some of his earlier material, I can kind of get at. But then there's other stuff that, not so much. Maybe Bob Dylan is an even better example. I love Bob Dylan's music when other people are singing it. But if he's singing it, his singing is just rough. And I am certain that this is an unpopular opinion, but the intonation or lack thereof, and the sort of vocal, the vocal sloppiness of it is just more than I can really manage and listen to comfortably. Yes, that's a limitation that I have. It comes out of what I do, in that I listen so closely and critically, and it'd be great if I could turn it off and turn it back on. And maybe at one point I could, but maybe I've just been doing this too long now. I don't know. I haven't been doing this too long. I feel like I'm just getting started. Oh, thank you. There's a heart popping up there. That was cool. I think that means that there was a donation, which, thank you. I really appreciate that. All these symbols, or maybe did I make a symbol that made it give a heart? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So, first of all, if there's, oh my gosh, was that the two thumbs? I think I did the two thumbs. Is that what gave you the fireworks? Yep. All right, that's pretty funny. I didn't realize that was in play here. I'm not sure how to turn that on or off, but I really do enjoy it. Okay, getting back to your point here. Sorry, I digress. Find out what's going on. If your brother wants to sing with emotion, he might have to explore a little bit of what that means. What does it mean? Does that mean that he's going to be singing a song that is going to bring him to tears, which is obviously going to, be an issue if you're trying to perform the song? But let's just say that that's what your brother is looking for, and it's not happening, and it just doesn't happen, and doesn't happen, and doesn't happen, and doesn't happen. And okay, well, then change the song. Find a different song. Maybe what you need to do is listen to music until you find a song, till your brother finds a song that brings him to tears, and then try singing that song and see if it still does it. It's not always the same, though, when you're the one making the music. That's a really big question, and I hope that I've helped a little bit, but maybe pop back in. I'm going to try and do these live events more regularly. Pop back in, remind me of your question, and tell me what's going on. Do a little exploratory stuff there and see what's going on. Sorry, I got distracted. Jake, from all the singing methodologies and their ways of training the voice, in your opinion, what is the biggest misconception about vocal technique? As there's a lot of conflicting information out there. Whoo! What a question that is. That's awesome. Okay, I got a couple. I know there's, okay, so here's, I'd say the biggest misconception is that there's a lot of different singing methodologies, actually. Most singing methodologies, when you look really closely at what's going on and how they're working, it's mostly repackaging more than reinventing. Or there'll be really minor differences from one to the next. You know, like for example, and a lot of times it's about how they're approaching things. Let's just take, now I'm not a speech level singing practitioner. I don't have like the authorizations to teach and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at it, it's taking a lot of what you would like the vowels that you work on and a lot of the symbols and the scale patterns, of course. And you look at it, and there's a lot of stuff that crosses over into bel canto, but there's lots of omissions as well. There's things that just don't seem to get talked about. That's fine. There are many people who absolutely love that method. Is it profoundly different from bel canto, or was it CVT, or CVM, the complete vocal theory or method, that one, the new one that came out, happened a year or two ago, a couple years ago, 5 years ago? Are they really so different? You know, when you look at all the individual points, yeah, there's loads of differences, but in the grand scheme of things, it's drawing on the same fundamentals, similar to the CVT or CVM, whatever that one's called. You know, that one even goes so far as to label, like I call the primo passaggio, and I call the break the secondo passaggio, and I didn't make it up. It's in the books that I read. That's all that is. It's just terminology. And I adopted it because I wanted to give vocalists the opportunity to think differently about their voices without having to circumvent words like chest voice and head voice. In other words, it's a way of shortcutting the process a little bit. Even though the terms are unfamiliar to most people, it means you don't have to do battle with your existing ideas and your existing habits. It's a way of working around it a little bit. So, like the complete method has like M1 and M2, and they use those to label the different registration events. Very similar to what's going on in bel canto. Now they use some other terminology as well, talking about grit and distortion and all these other things. I find that to be a little bit challenging. I like to talk as much about the actual configuration of the structures as possible. In other words, if I'm going to sing with vocal fry, how am I making that sound? I'm not adding distortion. I'm holding the vocal folds in a certain configuration so that you get the cover, the outer surface area, to vibrate a bit more and less of the overall mass, and you get that kind of sound. And then we can learn to do that in other ranges of our voice as we practice it. I wanted to teach so that there was as little translation as was possible, but it just meant that you might have to do a little bit of reading or ask questions about definitions here in the beginning. So that might be, Jake, the main thing is that if you start looking at all the different vocal methods and look at the specifics, you can see how they differ. But they're all kind of drawing from the same well, if you ask me. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by thinking that they're so terribly separate from one another. They all can have, like, they can all kind of inform the other. And so if you're finding that, for example, if you're doing all these bel canto exercises, and like especially some of the like really like esoteric messa di voce stuff where you're just and you're trying to do that and you're not getting anywhere, then you might benefit from a little bit. Going through the different things can be helpful. And I think the other massive misconception about vocal technique is this idea of sort of inexhaustibly stretched chest voice. Like earlier on in this live event, I sang a bunch of examples. And sorry, I've been really lazy with the muting of the drinking microphone. I sang a bunch of examples. For reference, is that all right? Geez, I just had the piano tuned and it really needs it again. Right about here is where my secondo passaggio is. So my break is about here. And we've grown really accustomed to hearing vocalists sing. Or we've also grown accustomed to we get that dramatic change. But what we haven't really figured out in the sort of wider knowledge is where we get a vocalist that sings past that point. The sound is consistent, but I'm here to tell you, I'm still changing to my head voice. I am going over the secondo passaggio. I am going from thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice to cricothyroid dominant singing voice, so chest voice, thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, to head voice, cricothyroid dominant singing voice, and back. And the technical term for when you make the tone qualities match is voce piena in testa. And if we don't do that, we are imposing a limitation on ourselves. I could probably sing that A belted. I could belt the A. I could use my thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice and stick to it and sing that. But then I would be arbitrarily limiting my overall range. If you honor the registration events and you practice making them smooth and consistent and all that, then you'll get the full usage of your range, not the other way around. So those would be my two big to-dos with vocal technique. It's a Latin way of pronouncing Kool-Aid. Oh, cool. Mark, in general though, how to emote while singing, make it real. Yeah, good follow-up, Mark. Unpopular. Sorry, I'm not going to win any popularity contests today. You don't know what the performer is thinking or feeling. We don't. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was having a lesson with a very famous vocal instructor. And I said just about the same thing. I said, I don't feel like I'm emotionally connecting with my audience. And their response to me was, you got to amp up your rhythm. And I was like, immediately dismissive. Not like outward. I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was immediately dismissive. And it took me years to wrap my head around what they were telling me. And in a nutshell, and they said this at the moment too, you don't know what that performer's thinking. I don't care if they're crying and wailing and gnashing their teeth and, shouting "knee" at the top of their lungs. Like, we don't know what's going on in their head. For all we know, they are thinking about that ham and cheese sandwich in the next room. We don't know. I think about Melissa Cross on the David Letterman show. Now, Melissa Cross was not the vocalist I was talking about a minute ago. She is a very famous vocal instructor in New York. Did The Zen of Screaming, I believe. Very famous, very highly regarded. And in the interview with David Letterman, after demonstrating her techniques and demonstrating how to do these very aggressive sounding sounds, she said the finishing touch is the face. You've got to put on the to make it look like it hurts, to make it look like it's mean. We don't know what's going on in their heads. And so my coach's advice to amp up my rhythm, I think there was another side to that though. Because there is power in energy and rhythm. And amping up your rhythm locks you into the experience of the music in a very fundamental way. And I had begun that process. Pardon me. I had begun that process thanks to Michael Udow from the University of Michigan, who basically, in a 2-hour masterclass, changed decades of rhythm practice in ways that I am still reaping the benefits of. But then my coaches at the time comment of amping up my rhythm was like a reminder to get into that more and to embody it more. And in so doing, you become, at least I became, more in touch with what was happening in the music that I was making. And it's something that I think about today. So I still stand by what I said earlier about sort of the objective versus subjective aspects of what it is to feel or emote. And listen to a dozen performers and you'll hear a dozen different ways of doing it. Perhaps, going back to the brother in question here, what they might also want to do is think about what modes of emoting work best for them. What feels right to them. For me, locking in rhythm, dynamics, phrasing, simplicity of line, and cleanliness of the delineation of it, those to me are what make music really exciting. When I listen to like a really highly ornamented, weepy kind of a thing, it just doesn't, I'm not really that excited by it. It doesn't speak to me. But that doesn't mean that, and quite frankly, I'm on the losing end of that because most people would disagree with that, and that's fine. That's awesome. It's giving the thumbs up because it's tracking my thumb. This is a bit overactive. Anyway. He says he feels stifled when he sings and can't get lost in the song. But you're right, I was his judge. And as an older brother, I am too harsh. So, okay, well, I'm glad that I was on the right track there. That's pretty funny. Anyway, this is obviously like a topic that, if you ask me, has no end. We could kind of keep on talking about this And we would all be right, and we would all also be wrong. I am paradoxically both right and wrong simultaneously in talking about this. But I suppose a more productive way to think about it is that some aspect of what I've been discussing will turn out to be the right path for the brother in question here. And it's quite likely that in getting on that path, there will be other things that we haven't even talked about today that come to light. Now, the other interesting thing here is that if he's just stifled with the older brother, with you, Kool-Aid, what's it like when you're not there? Does your brother feel cool when you're not there? I try to smile while singing. Music is a form of expression. I try to use phrasing by making each phrase go somewhere rather than just singing, yes, of course, exactly. Similar to my own approach. I don't necessarily smile, though. Jake, I was having vocal issues, but since doing the chest voice exercises in AAA method, my secondo passaggio is stronger. That's fantastic. Does a healthy chest voice influence other areas? Absolutely, of course. I mean, that's why the foundation of our technique starts there. Vowel alignment. Also, think about, there's a reason why we're not allowed, or we're not supposed to, text and drive. If you drive a motor vehicle of some type, you're not supposed to, sit with your phone and text while you're driving. You're said to be distracted. Distractions don't have to be critical. In other words, if you're texting and you're looking at your phone while you're going some direction at 80 miles per hour, you might very well run into something without knowing it. That's a very real possibility. You're probably not going to run into a brick wall if you are singing in your zona de passaggio and changing vowels. But having to manage the technical requirements of a registration event or two, as well as two vowel changes, is distracted driving. And so working in the chest voice means you can give your full attention to the alignment of the vowels, your arpeggio breath management, and then when those things become second nature, you can start moving into the upper register of your voice. Yes, of course, working on your technique in your regular register will have a very positive impact on your overall singing. Where are we? You rule, Jeff. Thank you for match. I appreciate that. Always make time for those live sessions. Thanks, Jeff. We love these live sessions. Thanks. You're welcome. I will absolutely. Okay, cool. Is it really Kool-Aid, or am I just being silly now? But yeah, thank you. Please do report back. You must have a Mac or an iPhone. It's built into the Apple OS. I think JC, the Music Man. Oh, yes. Oh, it's built in the OS. You are correct. I am using a Mac. I did not know it was built into the OS. I was wondering why it was like everywhere. It was like across all the platforms. Well. Where are we here? Casey Brown. Use your tenor warm-up videos every day. Thank you. You're very welcome. I do notice fatigue around the break for about the first hour of singing. Then I find some agility. Do I misunderstand falsetto versus head voice? Maybe. Haven't heard you sing. But if you're not making good registration events, or if you don't know what I just said, like if you don't know what I mean by that, then that would explain the fatigue. I did a 3-part series. There's a playlist. I think I called it like the how to sing high note. I'll drop it in the chat. Let's see if I can Gen X at the wheel here. I do reasonably well with technique. Technology. Where are you? High note series. Let's review the full playlist, and then I'll get a link. And I'll just drop this in the chat. There. If you haven't done that before, check that out. Joseph, I'm going to later driving, listening, dividing my attention. Yes, don't divide your attention while you're driving. Safety first. Sweetwater is very helpful. They're very, very helpful. It is limiting my words, but I share your videos. It's like, thank you. Oh yeah, I know the chats only let you do so many, but thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. We are going to wrap this up here. I think I've just got a few comments. Whoa, maybe I have a bit more than a few. Oh, hey, Mandy. I'm sorry about your sinus infection. Well done, Mark. Yeah, don't, singing, I had to stop doing that too. I was just so focused on what I was singing. It frightened me one time. Yeah, there are pop and alternative singers who sing at a whisper, raspy their songs. I know we are all artists doing our own thing, but I find it really difficult to not judge this. What are your thoughts? So Juliet, and I'm going to get back to you, Cool Above Dark LLC. I have not forgotten. I haven't missed it, I should say. You know, Juliet, a little while ago, I would have probably turned my nose up at that too. But to be honest, and you know what? This is just my opinion on this. It doesn't really matter. If you find it unacceptable, or if in your judgment you don't like it, that is absolutely right on, and you should just embrace that if that's what you want to do. I went back and listened to my recordings that I had made. And I'm speaking specifically more about Somewhere in the Fade, and to a large degree, the Atlantean. And I heard a sameness to it all. And that's what I was going for. But it kind of made me think that there was more to it than that. So now I'm not going to record my next album, with whisper tones, if we're going to dignify. I mean, it's just really widely abducted vocal delivery, right? Like it's a whisper. I'm not going to start singing like that all the time, but for years, I had been telling people that vocal technique should enable artistry. And when I listened to my recordings, sure, like I was proud of them, and I remain proud of them. But I also heard that there was more to it than that I could do more, that I was capable of using my voice more than just what I was hearing there on the recordings. And it's made me think very differently about this. And so when I listen to like a Billie Eilish, or to a lesser degree, I think Phoebe Bridgers sings with a little bit more adduction than Billie Eilish typically does. When I listen to artists like that, I think it's great. I love it. I understand that it comes with performance difficulties. Like it's extremely hard to amplify a voice that's that quiet, especially when you're on a stage and it's loud. It's all about gain and monitoring and front of house and just getting it to work. It has all kinds of technical difficulties to it. And so we're starting to hear a lot of these criticisms of like, oh, you should hear them live and so on and so forth. And I think it's not a fair judge because of the technical difficulties involved in amplifying it. But I think it's really pretty. And particularly in Billie Eilish, Her recordings will frequently transition from that whispered tone to a more fully adducted sound, and I find that to be very evocative, very emotionally engaging. So, that's how I feel about it anyway, for what it's worth. Last thing, cool above dark LLC. Been watching your baritoner and baritone daily vocal warm-up videos. I'm grateful for those. Have to get back to work. Okay, well, I'm sorry, I've missed you anyways, because it sounds like you've gone back to work, but thanks for popping in and thanks for your kind words. Really appreciate it. Everybody, have a great day. Thanks for popping in. Thanks for saying hello. I will see you next time. I'm going to be doing this more regularly, so stick around and, don't be a stranger. Say hi, etc., so on and so forth. We'll see you soon. Bye.